Let's go ahead and start the recording. And I'll read the mission statement. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting parents whose children have passed. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. HPH goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. HPH affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at this meeting is voluntary. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Discussions here are confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Zoom meetings run by leadership are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest presenters and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of HPH meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. HPH offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to beautiful Reverend Sue Frederick, who is going to read Dr. Earl and Linda Backman's bios. So thank you, Sue.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. You're all in my heart so deeply. Thank you, Elizabeth. So Dr. Linda Backman is a friend. I consider her a friend. She's a beautiful soul, and she trained me in soul regression therapy. This is her bio. Featured on Coast to Coast AM and Gaia TV, Dr. Linda Backman is an expert teacher, regression therapist, and licensed psychologist with 45 years of private practice experience, including 30 years of guiding soul regressions. Linda was trained by soul regression pioneer Dr. Michael Newton, and they worked together training other therapists for 3 years. Linda has conducted thousands of past life and between lives soul regressions in person and remotely. Linda founded the RavenHeart Center and Training Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 1997 and teaches regularly worldwide. Linda's books are Soul Design, coming in 2025, Souls on Earth, The Evolving Soul, and Bringing Your Soul to Light. She is an international expert in understanding how reincarnation plays a pivotal role in our personal growth and relationships. Now, Dr. Earl Backman. He's a former university professor and administrator, trained mediator, and is skilled in conflict resolution, coaching, and consulting. He has held academic and administrative positions at universities in North Carolina and Arizona, following receipt of his Ph.D. in 1971 from the University of Oregon. He served as Dean of Social and Behavioral Sciences, as well as University Ombudsman for Northern Arizona University from 1984 to 1997. Earl has also worked with Dr. Linda, his spouse, in making several national presentations on couples therapy, as well as having worked with couples in her former psychology practice. He is an author, a nationally known consultant, and is trained in both past life and between lives soul regression, as well as in the application of shamanic practices. In addition to managing business aspects of the RavenHeart Center, Earl has conducted channeling sessions for clients since 2010. He also consults with clients in the development or expansion of their healing practice. Welcome, Dr. Linda and Earl.
Yes,
Thank you.
welcome. We're so excited to have you back. And I just want to quickly say that they just got back from an incredible trip, which they actually took last year as well, to Egypt, but also to the south of Africa. So maybe you guys want to just say a little bit about that before getting started and tell people about how it was.
Wow. Okay. Well, where to begin? It's like part of me wants to say bios are too long. There's too much extraneous details, but that's okay. So thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Sue. And it's just awesome to be back with you guys. Um, well, I'll just say briefly, and Earl, add in whatever you want to add. Recently, we've been back about 4 weeks. Um, Earl and I, along with a colleague who lives in Egypt, we co-led a deeply focused spiritual tour of the ancient civilization of Egypt, which in some ways ties to what we're going to talk about tonight, because we're talking about um, um, our children on the other side and their evolved souls and why they came into body, what their purposes are, what their ongoing purpose is on the other side. So, in very simple terms, without saying a whole lot, Earl and I co-led this deep spiritual tour along with a colleague who lives in Egypt to to study the energy, to spend time in the ancient sites tied to the early dynastic civilization of Egypt, Egypt being one of the three oldest civilizations on the planet, all about um, moving our planet forward, all about what needs to change in our culture. And so each of the participants in the tour were working on their own life, their own commitments, their own soul, and we were working on humanity. Um, but we're going to talk about that tonight in regard to our children. So let me just, Earl, do you want to add anything else in about?
No, I think that's enough. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, um, some of you know Earl and me. Earl and I, too, are Shining Light parents. And as I've said many times, I love this organization, Helping Parents Heal, because it's not only devoted to assisting the challenging process of dealing with the emotions, the lack of the human presence of our children. But it's about, well, who are these children? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Who are our children? Who are they as souls? Why did they come into body? What's their purpose? And how does that relate to our bond with them, our ongoing immortal and permanent bond? But what does it have to do with aiding our planet? So that's where I want to go. I'll just say briefly, um, Earl and I became Shining Light parents a very long time ago through the premature birth and death of our second child that we named Adam. So I want to talk, I'm going to dive in and this will all kind of fit together. Earl's going to chime in, but Earl's going to do some channeling for us tonight to help us understand um, our children on the other side. What's their purpose? How are they still aiding humanity? How do we connect with them and all of that? So um, my work is all about evolving as souls. How does each of us is a soul in body, or we were a soul in body, and we always come into body to grow and evolve. And then when we cross over, and of course, for us as parents, or perhaps there are some siblings here too, um, uh, we're not done when we cross over. That's probably all of you know that now by communicating with and having conscious, overt signs of your beloved children, um, as do Earl and I. So it's about what are our intentions when we're in body And then what are our intentions when we're not in body? And what a lot of people don't think about is that, so when we are alive and we're incarnate, and probably most of you know this, we have a higher self. We bring a slice of our soul energy into our bodies at birth, and that causes us to be living and breathing on earth in a human body. Even while we're incarnate, our higher self functions in the higher realm, the spiritual realm, however you want to term that. And our soul, even when we're alive, is working and has coordination responsibilities in the spiritual realm. When our children cross over, they continue their work at the soul level. And as I think we all know, they also are accessible. So, whether we're in body or we're not in body, our intention, our focus is to aid this human culture and move us forward to more healthy ways of relating to each other, more equality, um, lack of being self-focused and ego-based, and looking at the collective of humanity. So where I want to start is I'd like to ask everybody to start thinking about your child or children, because I realize there may be some of you who have even more than one child on the other side. Think about the qualities of your child. So in what ways, and we'll be talking about this and we'll take questions and all of that. In what ways was your child unique? And were there times when you thought, well, my child's so unique, and this I think would be the case for some of you, thinking about your own child and your child on the other side, what were the unique gifts that your child had to help others? What were their gifts, even though sometimes maybe they struggled with their gifts? Maybe sometimes your own child, when they were in body, were frustrated with how humanity operates. And I'm saying this because I work with clients who have a child on the other side, who are shining light parents, and they'll say, well, my child always cared about everybody else. My child always focused on the needs of other people. And at times my child didn't understand why most humans don't focus on more than their own needs. So that I suspect that's a quality that many of you, if not most of you, would say, well, that was how my child was. That is still how your child is. That is still their focus. They're simply working from the higher realm. They're still working through you, through anyone they were close to show up and aid humanity. And I think probably a lot of us would say humanity is still struggling with getting out of a it's all about me mentality and moving into it's all about us mentality. So let me say a couple more things then, and we're going to bring Earl in and I'll explain what Earl's going to do and he's going to channel for us. Um, some of your children, some of our children, are souls that weren't designed to function primarily on Earth. Some children came into body. They weren't necessarily used to the way humanity operates, we might say the pitfalls of humanity. And I'm assuming many of you can resonate with this. And they wondered, or maybe even as young children, they asked you, the mom, the dad, the sibling, you know, how come people um, don't think about the other person versus themselves? Now, of course, we have to take care of ourselves in order to function. So part of my work, and some of you probably know this, is I work with clients to help them understand, were they created as a soul that primarily incarnates on earth and comes into body lifetime to lifetime to grow and evolve, using free will, sometimes making choices that, may not be the most perfect choices, but some of us are earth-based souls, souls that were intended and have been here many times to incarnate on earth. Some of us, and oftentimes children, who at times leave the planet when we least expect, or leave the planet when you might have thought it was much too soon. Sometimes they've accomplished what they came to accomplish, but their wisdom is advanced. And at times their wisdom is advanced, and you know that oftentimes. Sometimes you know that when they're born and you look into their eyes. But oftentimes you know that from the time they're 2, 3, and 4 years old, based on comments they make. And so there are souls that come from outside of Earth's energy, and they may come from planets and star systems and locations such as that are highly advanced. And so they come in, even as these very young children, sounding like very advanced grown adults, because their soul, you might say, is so grown. And then, of course, at times we also have souls that come from the angelic realm, which is a different location where souls come from. And when those souls come into body, again, think about your children, they are people whose orientation is all about love, compassion, non-judgment, looking at the glass half full versus half empty. And those are angelic souls. So I work a lot with those kinds of clients. So think about that. Yeah. So, maybe I mean, I could rattle on longer, but I think I won't. Earl is someone, and so now just this might have been a quicker and easier introduction for Earl rather than my long introduction, which is lovely from Sue, or Earl's long introduction, which is equally lovely. I discovered about 30 years ago, actually 31 years ago in a couple of days, um,
But
when
who's keeping track, right?
Yeah, but exactly. So 31 years ago, on the 12th of April, I fell into awareness of spirituality because I had a very dear friend and psychologist colleague who transitioned, and he started talking to me from the other side, and he started showing me past lives that I had shared with him. This was totally new to me. I was in my middle 40s at the time. So then I said to Earl, who I'd already been married to for 20 or 25 years, Earl didn't remember that he was intuitive as a child. And so I began to share with Earl that I was talking to my colleague on the other side, and my colleague, who Earl also knew, was showing me past lives that I'd shared with my colleague, whose nickname was Bud. And then Earl said, "Well, okay, I don't think that's weird." And I said, "Really? I thought you'd look at me like, your wife had suddenly sort of lost it." And Earl said no. He basically said that he said to me, "I guess I forgot something that happened to me as a boy." So I said, "What do you mean?" And Earl said, "Well, only now do I remember, in my middle 40s," Earl said, "that when I was a child, I spontaneously remembered my past lives in detail." And Earl said, "Nobody ever told me about that kind of thing. Nobody ever talked about it." But Earl said, "I began to remember my past lives." So that was the beginning of Earl remembering his intuitive capabilities. I'll add just briefly that almost always our children are souls with whom we've had past lives. it almost never is the case that we've not shared incarnations with our children on the other side, as well as, of course, if you have other children, your children in body today. So over time, Earl discovered he could channel, and Earl's gonna channel for us, and I'm gonna ask some questions to the guide that Earl channels. So Earl, do you want to introduce Maitraa, or do you want me to do that?
No, I can do that.
Okay, all right, go for it.
So while I do channel a number of souls on the other side, my main guide, who's been with me through many lifetimes, is a guide that's a soul that is a very old soul in the spiritual realm, no longer incarnates. And one of the powerful awareness I had in Egypt was we were in a sacred site. And I got the download that this was the last place that my guide lived with his last incarnation 5,000 years ago. And it was a very powerful revelation that I was sitting where his last incarnation on Earth took place. So his name is Maitraa. Many of you perhaps heard the name. It's an old soul, very advanced. So he will come through shortly, and Linda's going to ask questions, and Maitraa will answer them to the best of his ability. I channel a lot for clients who have a lot of questions about who they are at the soul level. So Maitraa, even though he has not incarnated in a very long time, to say the least, he is well adept at guiding souls in body at this time, both earth-based, interplanetary, and angelic realm souls. So
Okay. Okay. So Earl is going to bring Lord Maitraa in. I'm going to ask Maitraa some soul-related questions. We'll get to the point of taking questions from all of you. Maitraa is not going to answer individual questions. Maitraa does not work as a medium, but we're going to talk about how is the life purpose determined for our children? And I kind of have some questions here. So let's let Maitraa come forward, and he will speak.
good evening, Linda. I am pleased to be with you and all others who are on this call. I'm honored to have this opportunity to communicate with all of you. I take this responsibility very seriously. It is a gift that I am pleased to provide. So, Linda, I am ready for your first question.
Okay. And Maitraa has no idea what I'm going to ask, but Earl channels Maitraa for clients, but Earl also at times channels Maitraa to answer questions for Earl and for me. Maitraa, and this might, I think, would be helpful. Can you talk to us, some people that are with us this evening, and I know this is all being recorded as well. When you, since Lord Maitraa, since you are a soul that no longer incarnates, and I know you are an earth-based soul, what kind of responsibilities does a soul such as yourself have in coordinating the higher realm? What kind of, we might say, jobs or responsibilities do you have in the higher realm, even though you haven't come into body for thousands of years?
Well, contrary to what many who hold strong religious concepts think, the spiritual realm is not a place where souls who are no longer in body just lay around and do nothing and just enjoy not being in a human body. It is a place where a lot of work takes place. Souls that transition into the spiritual realm have responsibilities. And those responsibilities include serving on various councils. Many souls in the spiritual realm guide souls in body. As you well know, Linda, many of those souls, advanced souls in the spiritual realm, have aspects of their souls in body with whom they work. So souls in the spiritual realm support the evolution of humanity. They work energetically with souls in body to assist them, to guide them, to help them. Increasingly, more and more souls in body understand how they're being guided by guides in the spiritual realm or their higher selves. So the important thing to note is that there are major responsibilities that souls in the spiritual realm serve. There are organizations, it's much like what you might expect in terms of bodies operating on planet Earth. But the important thing is they continue to evolve by the work they do in the spiritual realm. And for many, they serve as guides to souls in body. Does that respond adequately to your question, Linda?
Yes, very much so. Thank you. So, Maitraa, would it be the case? Okay, let me ask it this way. Because, of course, as you know, Helping Parents Heal is devoted to supporting parents, siblings who've had a child crossover, and the child obviously their soul energy returns to their higher self. And so, what are your thoughts, Lord Maitraa, about when a child transitions from their body, do they become a guide to their parents, to their siblings? What, can you answer that question? Is that typical? Is it routine? How is that decided? When a child no longer has a body, but of course their soul is in the higher realm.
There's no set pattern for what will happen. You're quite correct in frequently, particularly with earth-based souls, when the soul energy of a child crosses over into the spiritual realm, the relationship they then have with those whom they've left behind is dependent on many conditions. The more past lives the various souls, parents, child, siblings have had as past lives, the more likely the soul energy of the child at whatever age that has crossed over will remain very close in contact with those with whom they've shared not only the most recent life, but past lives. Often they will take on the role of what I know Earl has found in some of his channelings with me. The child takes on the role of a temporary guide. That temporary nature could be years, because in the spiritual realm, time is not an important dimension. So often what happens, even in a channeling session, is the energy, even though, as Linda said, I am not, and Earl is not a medium, there are times when that energy will come through from the child because the child's connection with the parent's higher self is so strong and so ongoing. And I'm well aware that many of those on the call are able to communicate with their child on the other side. It is almost always possible for them to learn how to do that if they so want to. And it's often through the aid of their higher self, because their higher self is that as soul energy aspect that is most like them, i.e., parents. And so that can enable one's higher self to bring in the energy, the soul level energy of the child that has crossed over. So it is possible for almost every parent, perhaps less so with siblings, but not necessarily, but certainly parents, to be able to feel the energy of their departed, the soul energy of their child. Does that make sense, Linda?
Yes, it makes sense. And it's interesting because, often, Lord Maitraa, I would have a sense of what you're probably going to say because I know you well and talk to you frequently. But you've brought up something, and I want to be sure I understand what you're saying, but you've brought up, you've made a comment, given an explanation that I hadn't thought about. So, Lord Maitreya, let me be sure I understand you. It sounds like you're saying that, and I'll define this just to make sure everybody understands. So when we have a child who has transitioned and the child's soul energy has returned to the spiritual realm, and we would say reintegrated with their higher self. If I understood you correctly, Maitreya, you're saying that, I mean, I'll just use myself as an example. So Earl and I have a child on the other side. Um, the one of the ways that communication from our child, Adam, let's just say I'm trying to communicate with Adam, that's facilitated by, just to use this as an example, that's facilitated by my higher self, because when we're in body, we always have a higher self. Being able to talk to Adam is facilitated in the spiritual realm by my higher self assisting that to happen. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and remember, and you know this well, Linda, prior to incarnation, prior to an incarnation, the soul that is to be the child of a parent, that soul chooses their parents for a variety of reasons. And that's true even for interplanetary souls and angelic realm souls. And often the reason is because they have this deep connection with the soul energy of their parents. Can be from a past life, can be from whatever way. So that connection between the child prior to incarnation, the child's higher self, choosing the parents and essentially connecting with their higher self. That continues through whatever length of time the child is in body, but it then can continue after the child transitions, because it's higher self to higher self, because that deep connection at the soul level is permanent. It's stamped on the soul DNA of both parents and the child that has transitioned. So that connection never goes away. The feeling that parents have about their ability to connect or not connect with the energy of their transitioned child depends on, in many cases, their willingness to work with their higher self to connect with the energy of their child, and not necessarily try to do it directly with the energy of their child, because that capability, that ability may not exist without work on the part of parents. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let me just say something about that, and then I think maybe Elizabeth and Sue, I think we can, I want to make a comment about what Maitraa just said, but then we might take some questions that aren't per se, just because Maitraa is not going to function, that is not his skill as a medium, but that doesn't mean he won't answer questions that are about how to connect and that sort of thing, or purpose of a lifetime, and that sort of thing. So, Lord Maitreya, just I want to put more context around this so that everybody understands. What I understand you to be saying, Maitreya, and I often support people and kind of help coach them to do this. So, everybody, if you think about this, so uh, you're the parent of a child who has transitioned, or there may be siblings here, and I don't know that, but let's just assume everybody here is the parent of a child that's transitioned. What I believe you're talking about, Lord Maitreya, is that, again, I'll use myself. If I want to communicate with Adam, I intuitively make the intention, trust that I, Linda, can connect with my own soul energy, which is my higher self, in the higher realm. And then I ask my higher self to assist with the communication with, in this case, Adam. Is that what you're saying, Maitreya?
Yes, because there is the connection between your higher self
Right.
and the child who's transitioned, their higher self, because of the choice the child made,
Right.
incarnating, and the depth of that relationship. So when it's facilitated at the soul level, then it is much easier for parents or siblings to then connect with
Yeah.
the child.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, so Elizabeth and Sue, why don't we shift, at least for now? I can easily ask Maitreya more questions, and I could say a lot more, but if there are questions from anyone here who wants to ask about past lives with their children, not what are those past lives, but more the generalities of how this works when we connect with our child.
There are questions in the chat box, and they're all fairly general. So, if possible, maybe either Lord Maitreya or yourself could help with the answers. I think the first question I want to ask is one that I think everyone is concerned about. And I love that you all are talking about this. When you say higher self, do you mean only a portion of our soul is here? I sometimes wonder if only a portion of my soul is here, and part of me is with my daughter on the other side. So I'm always talking about spending time with my kids on the other side because part of me's over there. And especially at night when I'm dreaming, I don't necessarily remember it when I wake up. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, Lord Maitraa, I'll dive in, and then if you want to add. So this is an important concept for all of us to know about, and this is part of what I teach and the work that I do. So, okay. So when we are a soul, whether we're incarnate or not, okay, so let's look at it this way. So all of us are souls, and let's just say for a moment, none of us that are sitting here listening are incarnate. Okay. So what does that mean? That means 100% of our soul energy for all of us, if we're not incarnate, resides, call it heaven, call it the spiritual realm, use whatever term fits for you. When we get ready to come into body, when our children got ready to come into body, they created intentions for their upcoming life, and they decided, and this is being rather specific, but it does happen. They decided that they were creating a life agreement that maybe was rather sizable. They had a lot of intentions with the upcoming life. And so they decided they needed to bring, I'm going to make this very left brain so we all kind of understand it. Um, uh, we agree with to a life contract. Now, we have free will when we get here, so there are things we can change, but we also decide, for example, all right, I'm going to bring, or our children decide, they're going to bring 25%, that slice of their soul energy. The soul is holographic. So if they bring 25%, all of the past lives, all of the past lives of that soul are in 100%. So 25% is no different than the 75%. When we're incarnate, we always have our soul energy in the spiritual realm. We have a higher self, whether we're in body or we're not in body. So, Elizabeth, when you talk about being with your daughter on the other side, yes, of course, that makes perfect sense because your higher self is always on the other side, um, doing work at times and supporting your children on the other side. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for answering that. And Marina is asking a question that's also very interesting, and it kind of ties into what you were just talking about. How and when is it decided what responsibility each soul will have and for how long? How soon after passing do souls start to serve? So obviously, when they come here, they're just babies, so they can't start to serve necessarily right away. She also goes on, and I don't want to get this too confused, but she says, if connection is permanent from life to life, how come the soul is selecting parents before reincarnation? They are already predefined from a previous life. So do you think that that's too much to ask at one time?
Well, let's try. Maitreya, do you want me to keep going? And
Well, or parse out the question.
okay, let's split that up apart, Elizabeth, and hang on to the last piece, which I think we can answer if I'm sure that I understand. I think the piece that's important for, and this is really complicated stuff. So no wonder you guys are asking questions and it's a little bit hard to comprehend. Remember that and this would be the case. I find this to be true most any time I am working with a shining light parent. Often, if not always, um, the soul of our children that transition before we might expect and before what we think about a supposedly an average lifespan, often, if not always, the souls of our children are not young souls. They are experienced souls. And it is partly, um, it's partly related to the fact that they don't necessarily remain in body until they're 70, 80, or 90 years old because they're advanced souls. And oftentimes they come into body, our children come into body, um, and they are such evolved souls. They come into body, they accomplish what they intended to accomplish. And then, as hard as it is, as parents, as siblings, to cope with the transition, they return back to the spiritual realm. So, when our children are born, and let's just say they're 6 months old, their soul isn't 6 months old. Their soul could be, I like to put soul evolution on a 10-point scale to explain. So, young souls start at the lower end of evolving, or the lower end of the 10-point scale, and they're seeking, and all of us are gradually evolving. Your child may come into body, and they may be a 7 or an 8 on a 10-point scale of soul evolution. Think about this, everybody, as parents. Sometimes you look into the eyes of that newborn child of yours. And I've done this with my children, but I've certainly noticed it with my grandchildren. And it's like, I'm looking at an older soul. I'm not looking at a young soul. And so try not to think about your 1-year-old, your 2-year-old, your 5-year-old as young. So, relatedly, the more evolved the soul is, the more commitments that soul has in the spiritual realm. Those commitments exist whether we're incarnate or we're not incarnate. But I will add, because this might be useful for people, at times when our children transition, that, let's just call it 25%, just to use a number, that 25% of their soul energy that resided within the body that caused your child to be alive, that 25% of soul energy returns back to the higher self. And it's almost like, you might say, putting a slice of pie back into the pie, and there's no longer an empty, like if you cut up a pie, there's no longer a space there. The energy goes back to the higher self, and in some ways strengthens the energy that works at the higher realm. And I would strongly, well, let me just add, let's ask Maitraa. Maitraa, do you agree or not that at times when a child transitions, and that supposedly 25%, that slice of pie goes into the whole, makes a whole pie, that it strengthens the ability of the soul to carry out their responsibilities in the higher realm?
Yes, because they've gained experience that they needed to gain with regard to their soul evolution in their earthly incarnation, no matter how brief that might be. It's also important to note that often souls, when they choose their parents, one of the reasons they often choose to incarnate with them is to be their teacher. And that those lessons can be varied. And at the time of incarnation, the soul, the child, doesn't know how long it's going to take to achieve that soul intention. Sometimes, as was the case with Lynn and Earl, it was brief, but the lesson was learned. And parents can learn about what the intention of their child was in the communication after they cross over. So I wanted to say that the length of time a child spends in a body is dependent on many variables. And for many, they reach a point where they have accomplished their purpose. In others, it's a more ambiguous situation because it's more a crossing that didn't seem to be planned.
Mm.
So I wanted to say that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, because I know that I receive a lot of questions when I'm channeling with clients about, so that portion of the soul energy in the child that has crossed over reunites with the higher self. So it's 100%. So at some point in time, that soul energy is going to reincarnate again. And often loved ones still in body wonder, well, if that soul energy of who was my child, who's on the other side, incarnates, then will I still have access to their soul energy? And the answer is, of course, because the access is to the higher self that always exists in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
So one doesn't have to worry about the reincarnation of their child and the loss of contact. It's about believing, knowing, and trusting that the soul energy of their child who has transitioned permanently remains as a portion of the higher self in the spiritual realm and is accessible.
Wonderful. I think we have time for maybe one more question because we're almost to the hour here. So Jessica is asking something that I think is a very good question about young children, very young children, 2 to 3 years old. Is their purpose here different? I am unsure if they learn life lessons to take back, but wonder if they are here to teach us instead.
Yes, when a child is in body for a relatively short period of time, it is almost always the purpose of teaching parents, siblings, something, a lesson, something they need to learn, something they need to take away from this. That is frequently, if I won't say 100%, but it is often the reason why the child is in body a short period of time. And they leave when they feel like parents in particular understand that teaching, understand that purpose. And that's an important piece to discover. That can, in fact, be discovered after the child has transitioned. Again, through working with one's higher self and the child's higher self.
So, Linda, do you have anything to add to that? Or I guess there are a few more questions in the chat box, but what we should do is maybe have you come back at some point and be able to answer more questions for everyone and tell a little bit more about, I think that one thing that people have been asking over and over again is about our soul group that we go through these different incarnations with. And if we go through them with in this soul group, I guess there are parents who are asking, how is it that the children can pick the parents if they're already in that soul group? But from what I understand, we're not always playing the same role in that soul group. Is that correct?
Yes, and so yes, as a soul, we belong to, and I love, I call it a soul pod, but I know what Sue calls it. Sue calls it a soul posse, and so I love that term as well. So soul pod, soul posse. Um, our soul group is determined at the point in time of the creation, the conception of all the souls in that group. It's usually about 10 to 20 souls. And we trade places. You know, we can be best friends in one life. We can be grandparent and grandchild, or parent and child, or sibling and sibling. But it's not, so it's not repetitive. It's not like I'm always the parent and Adam is always the child. And we can also, quick example would be Earl and I have two living children. One of our children, Earl and I happen to be in the same soul posse. One of our children is in Earl's and my soul group, but our younger child, our daughter, is in the soul group. There are adjacent soul groups. So she, our daughter, is in the adjacent soul group. So it's not hard and fast. We're the parent, they're the child every lifetime.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And this has been so informative. And I really appreciate both of you coming on to speak to us. And I also appreciate Reverend Sue being kind enough to do the introductions. She's going to be with us at Unity on Sunday, and I'm thrilled about it. She's going to be doing a guided meditation to help us connect with our children in spirit. And I think that it's going to be such a wonderful exercise, and it will be on Zoom as well as in person. So people can, if they can attend in person, they can certainly watch it by Zoom. But thank you both for coming. And at some point, I'd love to hear more about Egypt and about all of the incredible things that you learned while you were there. And then also maybe something about South Africa, because it sounds absolutely beautiful as well.
It is
So-
our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Well,
Yeah.
and we
Been a
always,
pleasure.
oh, go ahead, Earl, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. We're
Oh.
pleased and honored to have been
Thank
invited.
you. And we always ask everyone to unmute and say thank you and good evening if you'd like to do so. So go ahead and do so.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Everybody.
you.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Have a good evening,
Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Dr.
Thank
Earl and
you.
Dr. Linda Bachman.
All right.
It's
Take
wonderful
good
to
care,
see all of you.
everybody.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.